Today on Hearts of Heroes, a fire threatens one of the oldest churches in the United States.
I saw the steeple topple over and my heart sank. It was a very difficult thing to see.
And it will take the brave first responders to save this historic building.
It reminded me of a Roman candle, a big giant Roman candle.
Then, an early morning fire threatens an iconic structure.
There was huge flames still coming out of the peak of the steeple.
We had fire coming up through the roof already.
Our church was being destroyed, like right in front of my eyes.
There were heroic efforts given to try and save this structure. Fires alone are terrifying, but they're even more alarming when they threaten historic landmarks filled with irreplaceable icons and artifacts.
And that's exactly what one Virginia community faced when a cornerstone church built more than 300 years ago went up in flames.
Fort Smith, Virginia sits right across the Elizabeth River from Norfolk. This city of more than 95,000 was established in 1752. And many of the buildings date back to the colonial era.
It's just a very historic old port city, beautiful architecture, wonderful people, beautiful churches, and a history that goes deep, and people that are fiercely proud of their city.
The Monumental United Methodist Church is one of the buildings that the community takes particular pride in. With its classic architecture and distinctive steeple, it holds a place of both historical and spiritual significance.
There are people in this church that are third and fourth generation members, and this church means so very much to them that it's actually part of their family.
I know it's just a building, but it's what that building represented to me. My family, my friends, some of the most joyous moments I've had in my life had been in that sanctuary.
This church represents not only the past, but the future, and tying themselves to a facility and a church that began in 1772, 4 years before our country claimed its independence.
But all of that was threatened one January afternoon in 2018 during some routine building upgrades. As workers left to take a lunch break, the unthinkable happened. The church caught on fire. No one realized just how quickly the fire was spreading.
We went out in front of the building, looked up, and could see a little teeny bit of smoke from the base of the steeple, and we're like, man, okay, this ain't gonna be too bad. And the time I got about halfway up the street, the whole thing kind of lit off at one time.
It reminded me of a Roman candle, a big giant Roman candle.
As firefighters jumped into action, all the church members could do was watch helplessly.
As we got within sight of the steeple, it looked exactly like the spire on Notre Dame. It was totally engulfed in flames, and it was heart-wrenching to see that.
So I'm looking up, I'm walking lively because, you have a steeple, you didn't know what it was going to do, so it's going to fall on my head.
But the fire was about to claim the iconic hallmark of the church.
I saw the steeple topple over and my heart sank. It was a very difficult thing to see.
And they were just pouring water onto the building, and the people in the parking lot, the expressions on their faces, I will always remember how people looked and how devastated they were by what was going on.
The church risked losing everything inside, and yet one artifact in particular held great importance to the parish.
We have a Bible that survived the 1863 fire. It was the pulpit Bible at that time, and we kept it on a lectern in the corner of our sanctuary. We were trying to stay out of the firefighters' way, but I went up to one of them and said, if you can, when you go back in, could you please try and bring that Bible out?
Joyce didn't realize it, but firefighter Matthew Buck had already rescued the Bible and removed it from harm's way.
I had seen it my first time into the sanctuary, and it looked old, and it was a big giant Bible. So I was like, that's neat, it's getting destroyed. So I just grabbed it on my way out. That's one of the awesome things about this job is, I mean, you do have bad things, but some things are good, and that was nice, and they were really, really happy.
It's a symbol of our faith, a symbol of our resilience.
Roughly an hour and a half after the building caught fire, the flames were finally extinguished. The question now, would there be anything left of their beloved church? Coming up, the members of the Monumental Church face a long road to recovery.
It's hard to explain when you see something like that and the fear of it being gone.
But first, a safety tip.
You should never ignore a fire alarm. Your first reaction should always be to alert those around you and evacuate to safety.
In the event of a fire evacuation, act immediately, but stay calm. Always stay low in case of smoke, and please do not waste time searching for personal items.
Unless you are trained to extinguish a fire, leave that to the trained professionals. Your number one concern during an evacuation is to get to safety.
In January of 2018, the Monumental United Methodist Church in Portsmouth, Virginia, went up in flames. The building was not only an historical landmark, but a place that anchored the community to its past and present.
I was married there. My children were baptized there. My grandchildren were baptized there. It's hard to explain when you see something like that and the fear of it being gone.
Immediately following the fire, our sponsor Belfour was called in to help in the rebuilding and restoration.
Getting to know the people in the church, the loss of the church was rather devastating for them, and the community as well. This is about getting the church back together, giving it back to the parishioners and the city of Portsmouth.
It's heartfelt, and it's something that we're so blessed and honored to be a part of, and we can't wait until services once again take place in that church, and we can be there to celebrate and look forward to that better tomorrow.
Philip and his team worked with the insurance agencies, architects, and structural engineers. But even months after the fire, there was still so much to be done.
So this sanctuary was built in 1872. The section over here housed the organ. As you see, all the windows, the stained glass has been removed.
The organ has also been removed. We were concerned about not only the pipes, but primarily the wind chests as far as water damage and humidity damage. I think Joyce has said it a number of times before, but we are just so grateful. Another 30 minutes, we might not be standing here talking about a restoration project. We might just have lost the whole thing.
Chief, on behalf of, I think, all of us here and all the parishioners, we'd extend to you our gratitude and to all of the men and women that you have rallied to help save this church.
Almost 2 years after the fire, Monumental United Methodist Church was finally complete, including a newly constructed steeple. And for their very first service, they invited Sheldon Yellen from our sponsor Belfour and the brave men and women of the Portsmouth Fire Department.
When I was here last, and you had so kindly walked me through the building, which I'd say building because it was not yet what it is today. I want to hear about the steeple because this was a work of art.
Absolutely. Of course, this steeple is the iconic structure for this church and has been for decades and decades, back into the 1800s. And its loss just basically felt like it was crushing us at that point. And we didn't give up on that steeple.
Every time a section went up, there were 15 or 20 people from Monumental out there staying for the day watching those sections go up. And it was just incredible.
We're so honored and really grateful that you've allowed us and entrusted us to represent you in this endeavor. And for us to be here today is just truly an honor. It really is.
We have our church back.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Following the service, the members of the Monumental United Methodist Church paid special tribute to the Portsmouth Fire Department.
We'd like to present you helmet from our department.
Fire Chief Hoffler also wanted to give a special thanks to Sheldon for their work in helping restore the church and the community by making him an honorary member of the fire department.
Thank you all so much.
Wow. This is heavy. Thank you, I'm shocked. My name's on here. Wow. To the firemen and women and the first responders, the police departments across the country, and for certainly here in Portsmouth. On behalf of all of us lay people across this land, from the bottom of our hearts, we're grateful. May you always be kept safe. May you always know that you're loved and cherished. And God bless you guys for what you do each and every day for all of us. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Bless you, guys. Bless you.
Coming up, an early morning fire threatens an iconic structure.
There was huge flames still coming out of the peak of the steeple. There were people watching, weeping.
Few places in Hazeldale, Washington are as revered as the Vancouver United Church of Christ. With its iconic architecture, it is one of the centerpieces in town.
But when a fire broke out on an early morning in May of 2016, it caused $2 million worth of damage to the church. The town of Hazeldale, though, was determined to rebuild and bring it back to its former glory. Meriwether Lewis from the Lewis and Clark expedition likened Vancouver, Washington to be the only desirable location for a settlement west of the Rockies. Today, it's the sense of community that unites the locals. A blend of new construction and historic architecture, Vancouver offers the amenities of a large city, but with the charm and hospitality of a small town.
I grew up in Minnesota, and my wife and I moved out here to Vancouver and immediately started attending this church.
When I first arrived, I was just really impressed with the community. It just seemed like they really cared for each other.
However, catastrophe hit this tight-knit congregation when a fire broke out in the middle of the night in their uniquely designed church.
It came in as a routine fire alarm. When they arrived, we had fire coming up through the roof already, I believe.
Word of the church fire spread just about as fast as the fire itself.
We got a phone call from my parents that the church was on fire, and there was flames all around our cross on the steeple. And it's a cross that can be seen for miles and miles.
Fire crews planned their attack while clearing the building, then immediately began battling that aggressive blaze.
Well, what we wanted to do was get on all sides of the fire and control it. The first crew pulled a line to the back before the other units arrived, and they hit what fire they could find over on the west side, and they couldn't do anything more until more units arrived on scene.
Crowds gathered, faces glowing in the reflection as they watched their beloved church burn.
There was huge flames still coming out of the peak of the steeple. The firefighters were working really hard to put that out. There were people as close as we could get, behind barriers, pressed up against, watching, weeping.
Because of the uniqueness of the structure and the 105-foot-tall wooden steeple, the fire just kept burning well into the early morning hours.
It actually burned for a long time because the steeple was so tall. It was really hard for them to get enough water up there to get the fire out. Our church was being destroyed, like right in front of my eyes.
Thankfully, not all heroes wear capes. Some have really tall machinery. A local utility company was able to lend a valuable piece of equipment that could help get the fire under control.
Divine intervention, some might say, that we were able to get that unique piece of equipment that allowed us to go up and finish a job.
There were heroic efforts given to try and save parts of this structure. Firemen put their lives at risk. They were concerned about the roof falling in on them, and yet there was no hesitation. They went in to do what they could to save this church.
The crews went up there with a hose line as well as tools, including chainsaws, to open up the siding and access the fire.
Despite all of their efforts, the church suffered significant damage.
My first reaction was kind of like disbelief. Just the magnitude of the damage was really hard to come to grips with.
This church was designed originally to be reminiscent of Noah's Ark. So it's very, very distinctive in our community. It was a sad loss. It was hard to see these folks and the loss that they were feeling.
With their sanctuary in ruins and the congregation heartbroken, many wondered how they'd be able to overcome this tragedy. Coming up, how this incredible community comes together and rebuilds emotionally and physically.
We really wanted to reimagine the space and really rethink the building and what it would look like.
But first, another safety tip to keep you safe.
It may seem like common knowledge, but something as simple as installing smoke alarms on every level of your home could be the smartest choice you ever make.
Having working smoke alarms inside bedrooms and outside sleeping areas will immediately warn you and your loved ones if a fire is occurring. And if a fire does occur in your home, get out, stay out, and call 911 for help. Never go back inside for anything or anyone. You could be making the problem even worse.
Remember, knowledge is power, the power for all of us to have a safer tomorrow.
After responding to a 2-alarm fire at a neighborhood church, the Clark County Fire Department in Vancouver, Washington, unfortunately could not save the landmark structure.
When I walked into the building, the first thing I thought about was all the people who had been baptized here, all the people who had been married here. And so I knew that this was really an important, special place for a lot of people.
As the damage of the tragic fire was sinking in, members of the congregation were eager to get started on the next chapter in the life of the church, so they devised a plan to make it better.
The church got together and decided that instead of just building back to the way the building was, we really wanted to reimagine the space and really rethink the building and what it meant and what it would look like.
Noah's Ark, everybody talks about how they were going to put another roof on this thing because it's rounded and it's very hard to do that.
The unique shape of the structure made it challenging.
Every glulam, every beam, every member of this is individually cut. The beams had to be rounded on both ends. Every board had to be laced in and bent. So there was a lot of custom materials that go in that you don't see that build the backbone and structure of this church.
After an extensive reconstruction, the moment the congregation had been waiting for, the church was finally ready to be reopened.
It's been 2.5 years of really hard work, and there's been a flurry of activity to get to this point today. It's a relief and just a joy to be back in this space.
The congregation gathered together for a dedication ceremony to express their gratitude to the local firefighting agencies and the reconstruction team for all their hard work.
I'm so grateful that the firefighters are able to be at the ribbon cutting ceremony and the rebuilding dedication. I mean, if it wasn't for their skill and the specialized training that they had, we would never have been able to fight this fire.
The pastor, Jennifer, grinning from ear to ear the entire day, and it was so neat to see her and watch her reaction and just see the whole community come together and everyone say, it's finally here.
The community and congregation were back where they wanted to be, together.
I expected it to feel like the end of something, like, oh, this is it, we've completed this project, end of chapter. But really, it just felt like the next step to me.
We took this very terrible event and made the best of it and have come out with just a beautiful, beautiful place.
Thanks to the courage and gratitude of those affected, an important local icon, the Vancouver United Church of Christ, was reconstructed and restored back to its original purpose, providing the people that live there with a sense of community that they'd feared they'd lost.
House fires can strike when you least expect them, putting both life and property in peril.
So we should really all give thanks to those selfless heroes who are there when we need them the most. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time.